From its opening scene of mystery to the last grand battle with a god, Final Fantasy VI is considered one of the best games ever made. It left a lasting impression on a generation of gamers not only for its gameplay, but its rich storytelling, music, art, and character development. Video games, similar to comic books, have often been regarded as inferior compared to other forms of media like movies and books. In Final Fantasy VI, we see a combination of elements that elevate this medium of storytelling to a level that is able to resonate and connect with people. Released in 1994, Final Fantasy VI was one of the first games to present a truly ensemble cast, each with rich backstories and personal struggles. It tackled mature themes like loss, war, sacrifice, identity, and redemption. The opera scene, where a character performs a heartbreaking aria, is one of gaming's first instances of blending storytelling with theatrical performance. The moment when the world is literally shattered by Kefka's destruction of the planet remains one of the most shocking and powerful narrative twists in gaming history. Despite the 16-bit hardware limitations, Final Fantasy VI used innovative storytelling techniques, Mode 7 graphics for airship travel, dramatic sprite animations, and expressive character gestures. The way the game directed its scenes, from Kefka's ominous laughter to the desolation of the world of ruin, created an almost cinematic experience that was ahead of its time. The second half of the game, where the player explores the ruined world and can rebuild their party in any order, was revolutionary. It gave the player control over the pacing of the story, allowing for an unprecedented level of emotional engagement. Final Fantasy VI presented a unique and inspiring art style for the time. Yoshitaka Amano's artwork for Final Fantasy VI played a crucial role in shaping not only the game's aesthetic, but also in bridging the gap between video games and traditional fine art. His work had a lasting impact on both the gaming and art worlds in several key ways. Amano's ethereal, surreal, and heavily stylized designs contrasted sharply with the pixelated, sprite-based graphics of the Super Nintendo era. His character illustrations featured flowing garments, delicate facial features, and an almost watercolor-like softness, blending influences from Art Nouveau, traditional Japanese art, and fantasy illustration. His work helped shape FF6's tone, giving it a mythic, timeless quality that set it apart from other RPGs. Great music is able to convey a range of emotions, and the music of Final Fantasy VI delivers impactful music that enhances the story and characters. Nobuo Uematsu's score for Final Fantasy VI is widely considered one of the best video game soundtracks ever composed. Tracks like Dancing Mad and Aria de Mezzo Carretera, the opera song, showed how video game music could rival film scores in emotional impact. The way the music evolves to reflect character moments and world events further proves its artistic value. Unlike many earlier RPGs, FF6 did not have a singular protagonist. Instead, it introduced over a dozen playable characters, each with their own arcs. Terra's struggle with identity and purpose, Celeste's heartbreaking suicide attempt in a post-apocalyptic world, and Locke's tragic past give the game a level of emotional depth that was rarely seen in video games at the time. It also introduced one of the best video game villains ever created. Kefka Palazzo, the primary antagonist of Final Fantasy VI, is one of the most iconic villains in gaming history, standing out for his nihilism, sadism, and descent into madness. His character is deeply layered, and several key themes define his personality, motivations, and ultimate downfall. Kefka embodies pure chaos. Unlike traditional villains who seek power for an ideology or revenge, he delights in destruction for its own sake, showing no interest in ruling or maintaining order. His belief that life is inherently meaningless culminates in his final speech before the last battle, where he asks why people continue to struggle when everything eventually fades. This nihilistic philosophy makes him a rare type of villain, one who does not seek control but rather the complete eradication of existence. Kefka's transformation from a court gesture and low-ranking general to a godlike figure mirrors his increasing descent into madness. He was the first experimental Magitech Knight, a process that left him mentally unstable, warping his already sadistic tendencies. As he gains more power, first with magic, then with the power of the Warring Triad, his cruelty intensifies. Unlike other villains who might be restrained by ambition or strategy, Kefka is completely unhinged, showing how unchecked power can lead to total corruption. Kefka starts as comic relief, appearing as a flamboyant and bumbling figure who seems incompetent compared to the likes of Gestal. His exaggerated mannerisms and high-pitched laughter make him appear non-threatening at first, luring players into underestimating him. However, as the game progresses, it becomes clear that his lack of restraint makes him far more dangerous than anyone else. This subversion of expectations, starting as a clown and ending as the ultimate villain, sets Kefka apart from more traditional brooding RPG antagonists. Unlike villains who seek to conquer, Kefka simply wants to destroy. He finds joy in the suffering of others, as seen in his infamous poisoning of Doma, where he kills an entire kingdom not out of necessity, but for amusement. His glee in destruction escalates further when he becomes a god, vaporizing entire cities with his light of judgment, just to satisfy his whims. His cruelty lacks a grand justification. He is not seeking revenge or enforcing his ideals. He destroys because he can, making him a truly terrifying force. While Kefka appears to enjoy his chaos, his final speech reveals a deeper layer. He genuinely believes life is meaningless. He mocks hope, love, and perseverance, calling them illusions that only lead to suffering. In this way, he represents the ultimate existential crisis, someone who, unable to find meaning in life, chooses to obliterate everything rather than search for purpose. His destruction of the world and ascension to godhood are not just acts of cruelty, they're his way of proving that nothing matters. Kefka's ideology is ultimately rejected by the heroes. Each of them finds their own reason to live, whether through love, duty, or redemption. Their refusal to succumb to despair directly contradicts Kefka's worldview, making his downfall not just a physical defeat, but a philosophical one. His last words, spoken in disbelief and frustration, show that he cannot comprehend why anyone would choose to keep going. Everything fades. His death is the final rejection of his nihilistic ideals, affirming that life has meaning because people give it meaning. Tara Branford's character growth in Final Fantasy VI is one of the most compelling arcs in the game, as it explores themes of identity, love, and self-acceptance. At the beginning of the story, Tara is introduced as a powerful yet emotionally detached character, struggling with the weight of her origins. As the game progresses, she undergoes significant development, ultimately finding a sense of purpose and belonging. Tara starts the game as an amnesiac, enslaved by the Gestalian Empire and controlled through a slave crown. As a half-human, half-esper, she is an anomaly in both worlds, never fully belonging to either. Her journey begins with an existential crisis. She questions her purpose, her emotions, and her place in the world. This struggle is heightened by her unique magical abilities, which set her apart from others and make her a target of manipulation. One of Tara's central dilemmas is her inability to understand love. She is unsure of what it means to care for others beyond the superficial sense of camaraderie. This theme is emphasized when she expresses doubt about whether she can ever truly love someone, reflecting her emotional distance due to years of conditioning by the Empire. Tara begins to change as she interacts with members of the Returners and sees different forms of love and commitment. Throughout the game, she witnesses acts of sacrifice, compassion, and perseverance, which slowly chip away at her emotional barriers. Her biggest turning point comes in the world of Ruin when she chooses to protect the orphaned children of Ma Blizz. Here, she experiences love in a non-romantic way, by becoming a caretaker and finding fulfillment in protecting others. This moment solidifies her emotional growth, showing that love is not limited to romantic feelings, but extends to compassion and responsibility. By the end of the game, Tara fully embraces both her human and Esper sides. In the final battle, Kefka challenges the heroes, questioning the meaning of life. Tara, once lost and searching, now stands resolute, realizing that love and human connection give life meaning. In the ending sequence, as magic disappears from the world, she chooses to remain human and live on, symbolizing her acceptance of her own identity. Lot Cole, one of the central characters in Final Fantasy VI, undergoes significant emotional growth throughout the game. Initially portrayed as a confident and somewhat cocky treasure hunter, Locke hides deep personal wounds related to his past failures. His arc revolves around guilt, redemption, and ultimately healing. Locke's defining trait is his overwhelming guilt over the death of his former love, Rachel. In the past, Rachel suffered an accident while protecting him, causing her to lose her memory. The people of her village blamed Locke for her condition, and by the time her memory returned, she was on the brink of death. She passed away, leaving Locke devastated and burdened with the belief that he failed to protect her. This sense of guilt drives him to become overly protective of women, as seen in his interactions with Tara and Celeste. He insists on being their knight in shining armor, not necessarily out of romance, but as a way to atone for his past mistakes. His protectiveness is not just about chivalry, it's a coping mechanism to avoid another loss like Rachel's. Locke's relationship with Celeste serves as a major turning point in his character development. Initially, he views her as another person he must save, but as the story progresses, he begins to see her as an equal rather than someone in need of protection. Celeste, in contrast to Rachel, is strong-willed and capable, challenging Locke's protective nature. Their interactions slowly shift from obligation to genuine care, with Locke learning that his value isn't defined by his ability to save others, but by who he is as a person. His realization that he can trust and rely on others helps him start moving forward. One of the most poignant moments in Locke's story occurs in the world of Ruin, where he seeks out the Phoenix Magicite. Believing it can revive Rachel, he holds on to the hope that he can undo his past mistake. However, when he finally uses it, Rachel appears only briefly, telling Locke that he must move on and stop being bound by guilt. This moment is crucial to Locke's development. It signifies the end of his self-imposed burden and marks the beginning of his emotional healing. Phoenix, as a symbol of rebirth, represents Locke's ability to let go of the past and embrace the present. By the time of the final battle, Locke is no longer shackled by guilt. His relationship with Celeste is no longer just about redemption, but about mutual respect and love. He fights not to atone for his past failures, but to build a future worth protecting. In the game's ending, he saves Celeste from falling, mirroring his past with Rachel. However, this time he succeeds, not as an act of redemption, but because he has grown into a person who can move forward without being haunted by his past. Celeste Cherie is one of the most compelling characters in Final Fantasy VI, embodying themes of redemption, identity, and resilience. As a former Imperial general who defects to fight against oppression, her journey is one of self-discovery, emotional growth, and learning to embrace her own humanity. Celeste is introduced as a high-ranking general of the Gestalian Empire, having been artificially infused with magic as part of their Magitech experiments. Unlike many villains in the Empire, Celeste initially follows orders with an air of cold detachment. However, her first major turning point comes when she is imprisoned for treason after questioning the Empire's methods. Her early arc is defined by her search for a new purpose. Unlike other characters who always had a personal stake in the fight against the Empire, such as Locke and Tara, Celeste initially lacks an identity outside of her role as a soldier. When she joins the Returners, she is forced to forge her own path, no longer defined by Imperial rule. Celeste's relationship with Locke plays a significant role in her development. Though it is not solely a romantic subplot, it is about trust and learning to rely on others. At first, she is wary of him, and his overprotectiveness seems unnecessary to her. However, as the story unfolds, she starts to open up emotionally. One of the most pivotal moments in their dynamic occurs during the infiltration of the Opera House, where Celeste is forced to play the role of Maria in a theatrical performance. This moment symbolizes her transition from a cold, duty-driven soldier to someone capable of expressing vulnerability and emotion. Her struggle with trust is tested further when she is falsely accused of betraying the Returners, leading to Locke doubting her loyalty. The pain of being doubted, despite having abandoned her past, deepens her internal conflict about whether she can ever truly be accepted. One of the most iconic and emotional moments in Final Fantasy VI is Celeste's attempted suicide in the World of Ruin. After Kafka reshapes the world into a ruined wasteland, Celeste wakes up on a deserted island with only Sid for company. As time passes, Sid, who had become a father figure to her, falls ill. Depending on the player's actions, he either dies or recovers, but if he dies, Celeste is overcome with despair. Believing herself to be the last person alive, she climbs to the top of a cliff and throws herself off, a moment of sheer emotional devastation. However, upon surviving, she discovers a hint of hope, a bandana belonging to Locke, signaling that she is not truly alone. This moment marks Celeste's rebirth, where she chooses to fight for life instead of succumbing to despair. This turning point solidifies her resilience. From this point onward, she is not just surviving, she is leading. She gathers her scattered allies and becomes the driving force in bringing the party back together, proving that she is more than just a former general or a lost soldier. By the time the party faces Kefka, Celeste has fully embraced her own sense of purpose. She no longer fights because of duty or orders, but because she has chosen to. Her final battle against Kefka is more than just a confrontation with a god, it is a confrontation with despair itself. In the game's ending, she nearly falls during the escape from Kefka's crumbling tower, only for Locke to catch her, mirroring his past failure with Rachel. This time, he saves her, symbolizing both of their growth. Locke has moved past his guilt, and Celeste has learned to trust in others. As she looks toward the horizon in the final moments of the game, Celeste has become a fully realized individual, someone who has endured suffering, found hope, and emerged stronger. Scion Garamondi is one of Final Fantasy VI's most tragic yet inspiring characters, embodying themes of loss, honor, and redemption. As a loyal knight of Doma, he begins his journey as a man consumed by grief and vengeance. But over time, he learns to heal, forgive, and find new purpose. His arc is one of the most emotionally resonant in the game, showcasing his transformation from a broken warrior into a man who embraces life once more. Scion is first introduced as a proud and honorable retainer of the Kingdom of Doma, unwavering in his loyalty to his king and people. However, his life is shattered when Kefka poisons Doma's water supply, killing everyone in the castle, including Scion's beloved wife and young son, Owain. This, this event defines Scion's early character. Overcome with grief and rage, he throws himself into battle against the Empire, slaughtering enemies with reckless abandon. His sorrow is so profound that he is unable to move forward, instead clinging to his hatred of the Empire as the only thing sustaining him. After joining the Returners, Scion struggles with his place in the world. He is deeply uncomfortable with technology, distrusting machines and airships, which contrasts him with characters like Edgar and Setzer. His old-fashioned ways reflect his difficulty in adapting to a world that has changed irreversibly. His survivor's guilt weighs heavily on him, particularly during the dream sequence in the World of Ruin. In this surreal event, Scion's mind is haunted by three demonic entities, Rex Soul and his minions, who torment him with visions of his failure to protect his family. This moment symbolizes his internal struggle, and by confronting and defeating them, he takes a crucial step toward accepting his past and beginning the healing process. One of Scion's most touching side stories occurs in the World of Ruin, when the party discovers that he has been secretly writing letters to a young woman named Lola, pretending to be her deceased fiancé to give her hope. This act is both noble and tragic, as it shows Scion's deep empathy. He does not want anyone else to suffer as he has, but also highlights his lingering inability to move on. However, when the truth is revealed, it marks another step in his emotional growth. Scion realizes that clinging to the past, even for good intentions, is not truly helping himself or others. This moment helps him begin to find peace. By the end of the game, Scion has grown immensely. He carries the memory of his lost family, but he no longer lets it define him. He finds a new purpose in fighting for the future, no longer just out of vengeance, but out of hope. His character arc is fully realized in the game's finale, where he stands alongside his allies, not as a broken man seeking revenge, but as a warrior who has learned to live again. His final words during Kefka's confrontation reflect this growth. He now fights not just for the dead, but for the living. Edgar and Sabin Figaro are twin brothers whose contrasting personalities and life choices create one of the most compelling sibling dynamics in Final Fantasy VI. Their arcs explore themes of duty versus freedom, the burden of leadership, and personal growth through their individual journeys. Edgar, the older twin, is introduced as the charismatic and resourceful King of Figaro. Though he presents himself as a womanizer and carefree ruler, this persona masks the heavy burden he carries. When their father died under suspicious circumstances, Edgar and Sabin were left with a choice: rule the kingdom together or let one of them be free. Edgar manipulated a coin toss so that Sabin could leave and live without obligation, while he took on the responsibility of ruling. His decision is selfless, yet it comes at a cost. Edgar is forced to suppress his own desires and dreams for the sake of his people. Despite being a monarch, Edgar secretly opposes the Empire and aids the Returners. His involvement in the Resistance shows that he is not just a ruler who maintains the status quo, he actively fights for a better future. His skill with technology and machines further symbolizes his forward-thinking nature, in contrast to Cyan's traditionalist views. Over the course of the game, Edgar learns that leadership is not about shouldering all burdens alone. He gradually opens up, trusting his allies and accepting that he doesn't have to bear the weight of Figaro entirely by himself. His interactions with Sabin also reinforce this. Though he originally saw himself as a responsible brother who had to protect Sabin, he comes to respect Sabin's choices and acknowledges that his brother has grown into his own kind of strength. By the game's end, Edgar is not just a king by obligation, but a leader who embraces his role with confidence and balance. Sabin, in contrast to Edgar, rejected the life of royalty. Disillusioned by court politics and the loss of their father, he saw the throne as a prison and longed for personal freedom. When Edgar rigged the coin toss, Sabin took the opportunity to leave and trained under the martial artist Duncan, honing his strength and independence. Sabin's journey is defined by his desire to carve his own path, proving that strength is not just about physical power, but also about emotional resilience. While Sabin initially embraces his freedom, his encounters throughout the story teach him that strength comes with responsibility. His protective nature is evident in his interactions with Cyan, Gao, and even his brother, despite choosing a different path. He never fully abandons his family or the ideals of justice. One of Sabin's most iconic moments is when he single-handedly holds up a collapsing house to save a child in the world of Ruin. This act symbolizes his growth. He no longer runs from responsibility, but embraces it in his own. The reunion between Edgar and Sabin in the game is one of mutual respect. While Edgar initially saw himself as the responsible brother and Sabin as the reckless one, he comes to understand that Sabin's choices was not about selfishness, it was about finding his own way. Similarly, Sabin realizes that Edgar's decision to stay and rule was not a sign of weakness or submission, but of strength. In the world of Ruin, when Edgar disguises himself as Jared to infiltrate a bandit group, Sabin sees his brother's cunning and adaptability firsthand, proving that Edgar is more than just a ruler, he is a warrior in his own way. Edgar and Sabin's growth is deeply intertwined. Edgar learns that leadership is not just about duty, but also about trust and adaptability. Sabin, in turn, realizes that freedom does not mean escaping responsibility, but using his strength to protect those he cares about. By the end of Final Fantasy VI, both brothers embody a balance of their ideals. Edgar is not just a king bound by duty, and Sabin is not just a warrior seeking freedom. They each grow into leaders in their own right, proving that strength comes in many forms. Their dynamic remains one of the most touching portrayals of sibling relationships in gaming history. Final Fantasy VI remains a masterpiece of video game history. With its mature story, dynamic ensemble of casts that go through growth and change, amazing art and music, Final Fantasy VI ascends to something other than just a game. It becomes an experience, one that can change the viewer and resonate with its audience. Let me know your thoughts and experiences with this great game. Is there a specific moment that strikes a chord for you? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.